Hey everyone, it's Jonathan and welcome back to Every Version Ever. Today I'm joined by my friend Sam and we're talking about one of the most well-known versions of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Tim Burton's 1999 film Sleepy Hollow, starring Johnny Depp, Christina Ricci, and a host of stars I had no idea were in this movie. Sam loves horror movies, and I knew there were a few versions of Sleepy Hollow that were bordering on the genre. It is a ghost story after all. So as soon as I decided I was doing versions of Sleepy Hollow for October, I asked her if there was any she'd want to do with me, and she immediately responded with this one. This version of Sleepy Hollow is one of her favorite movies. It's one of her yearly Halloween traditions, and it was already on my list of ones that I'd need to cover, so it was a no-brainer to do this one with her. So, how familiar are you with Sleepy Hollow, the story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow?
You know, when we watched Sleepy Hollow, I downloaded the book on Kindle to read it, and I never did. So, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm sure I have read it, and I know I've seen other Sleepy Hollow things, but, like, most of my familiarity is the Tim Burton movie. I know doesn't go with the book. I know I've seen, and not just the frogs. What was that?
The Adventure of Ichabod and Mr.
Yeah,
Toad.
when we talked about that, that's not the same. So, let's just say I'm not, because I'm sure I did read it as a kid, but I never did read the Kindle. I meant to.
Yeah, like I knew, because I watched this before I'd read the book. Like I was familiar enough with the story. I'd watched The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. So, that and an episode of Wishbone.
Maybe I bet I saw it on there because I watched a lot of Wishbone as a kid.
Okay, well I was going to tell you, I have a weird memory of the Wishbone episode on Legend of Sleepy Hollow that I didn't realize until not too long ago connects to your dad.
Oh.
Because I was watching that when they were installing that fish tank when I was a kid.
Oh. Oh yeah, because was it at your...
My Uncle Dan had the
Dan.
fish, and then apparently it was your dad.
Probably.
Who was helping put in the fish tank in our basement.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think he used to help everybody with aquariums back in the day.
Yeah, so, I have a weird memory of watching the Wishbone Legend of Sleepy Hollow while people were bringing in fish.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I probably watched the same episode because, like I said, we didn't have cable, and that was on Iowa Public Television.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I probably watched it on there, too.
I was obsessed with Wishbone. That was, one of my first really big media obsession.
Well, he's a cute little dog, and he's telling stories, like...
And The Legend of Sleepy Hollow was my favorite episode.
Mm-hmm.
I had others but right now, thinking back, I think I watched The Legend of Sleepy Hollow one the most. It was an hour-long special. I'm actually doing that for the podcast, too.
I figured you probably were. If you're going to nail all of them, you got to do that one.
Yeah, that was, my version as a kid. I watched it, because I think I watched The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, once.
Yeah, I think I watched it, once, but it just stuck in my head, because it's like a fever dream. You, look back, and you're like, did I watch a show with a toad? And a... guy with no head. Did that happen, or did I dream that? I don't remember. But no, this would be the one that I'm most familiar with.
It is not faithful to the book, but I think they did a good job taking inspiration from the book.
Yeah, I know originally they wanted this to be a hard slasher, because I think the original concept started in 93. And they wanted to do a hard slasher, and I think that got kind of boxed out, and then we ended up with what we have, which is much better. Mm-hmm. This is at least, anybody can watch this. Like I said, when we were watching it, it hadn't even occurred to me that it was R-rated. For some reason, it didn't tick in my head once, because I know I saw it in theater with a friend when we were 16. And rewatching, I'm like, well, of course it's R. Look at all the head lopping and blood, but... it's such a soft R. I feel like anybody could watch this.
I would have been grossed out and disturbed when I was younger, but watching it now, it's very stylized and fake. The head stumps.
Well, I mean, you watch an episode of Bones on public, during the day on TV, it's more graphic and gory than this movie is.
Yeah. I think it's probably just the fact that they show the action happening.
And the blood. I think most of it's blood.
Like when Brom Bones gets killed.
Yeah, the splatter. Like, that's why in alien movies, the aliens will never have red blood, because you can show as much gore as you want. But if the blood is red, it is a weird Hollywood thing, then you're going to get an R rating. So that's why so many PG-13 horror movies can show a lot of action, like stabbings and stuff like that. But if there's no blood splatter, that's why everybody gets stabbed with a clean sword.
For whatever reason, it does make it less disturbing.
Yeah, until you're like, no. Sword should have blood on it. But
that is true. If you stop and think about it, it does not seem correct.
yeah, it's like wipes itself clean on its way out.
So I feel like the essence of Ichabod is still there. He's kind of cowardly.
I always knew he was kind of cowardly in other renditions too.
I think they have improved his attitude towards Katrina a bit, because in the book, like, I feel like the book, I was talking about to this recording another episode, I feel like the book it's almost a contradiction of him as a character, but I was talking to Sarah and she pointed out he's very human, because on the one hand, he is described as being a kind person, but on the other hand, his primary motivation for going after Katrina is her money. He knows that she's rich, her father is rich, they have a huge plot of land, and he wants that for himself.
Right.
And then there's also the passage where it talks about he's very something about he uses the phrase spare the rod and spoil the child very freely, because he's a school teacher, so he beats his kids.
I was going to say, yeah, because he wasn't a detective in the original story. I was thinking he was an insurance man, but no, that's Bram Stoker's Dracula. So yeah, it was a school teacher in the original story.
Yes.
Well, so back then teachers still didn't make very much money, huh?
No, and that's actually a plot of the point. He does not make very much money, so he stays with everyone that all the kids' parents, he stays with them, and they feed him and give him room and board.
Man, so he's just like a couch surfing, like...
Basically, yeah.
Oh, I don't like that version of Ichabod at all.
I mean, that's who he is.
I'd say they did do better than with making him.
The one, I think the biggest change that they made is the fact that in Sleepy Hollow, he is not superstitious at all. He's very scientific until he is given proof that this ghost exists.
He witnesses what he's seeing and
but
can't deny it.
In the book, he is very superstitious.
Which makes sense, because back then everybody was superstitious. I mean,
well, he took it to the next level, and it was his superstition is used against him at the end, because like they don't say absolutely for certain that the ghost didn't exist, but it's heavily implied that it was Brom Bones dressing up as the ghost to scare him out of town so Brom can
marry Katrina.
Yeah.
Right. Which would make sense. Like, if you look crazy and nobody else believes you, then yeah, they're gonna like get out, like, you weirdo. you know, like, we're tired of feeding you and letting you sleep on the couch. Like, time for you to go.
I think most of the people in town liked him because he was nice to everybody, but to me, his niceness was motivated mostly by he liked eating at their houses.
Right. It was a front. It was to get what he wanted.
Yeah, and the book does say that he was kind, but I feel like
what kind of kind were you?
The more it describes him, the more kind does not seem like an apt description to me.
Right. It's like he was nice when he wanted something.
Basically. That's the gist that I got out of him.
Yeah. It'd be different if he like came to town, got his own house, and invited the town over for dinner. But no, it's more like you're inviting me over for dinner, and I'm not leaving.
Not that he had a choice, because he didn't have a house.
No,
he
didn't have anything. And the movie does kind of, you know, he comes into town, and they offer to let him stay at their house, which I suppose is kind of looking at it like the original story. Like, he's going into their house, eating their food, and sleeping in their bed.
He stayed with the Van Tassels, though, right?
Yes, the Van Tassels.
So, in the book, I'm not sure who all he stayed with, but I think at the time of his disappearance, he was staying with Van Ripper, and I don't remember who Van Ripper was in the movie, because I think he's in the movie.
Yeah, they don't...
Like, all of the side people, I think they were named in the book, but I can't keep them straight, because most of them didn't.
Well, and they all have very similar last names. That's why when they go through that family tree in the movie, I'm just like, oh boy, God, it's like a tumbleweed.
Tony Maudsley.
I wonder if it's the Gingers. That redheaded family, maybe? Because I'm sure, like,
think so. No, because their last name is Killian, because Claire Skinner played
right.
Beth Killian, the town midwife.
Well, let me try to find...
Obviously, Van Ripper was not a huge character in this
No.
version. Not that he was a huge character in the book either, but...
I don't even know.
He mainly sticks out to me because one of the versions that I did was a 2004 made-for-TV movie starring Kaylee Cuoco.
Oh.
It was like a modern-day sort of reimagining, except Sleepy Hollow, the story of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow was
He is
presented
the
as...
carriage driver. When he's
so the one who's beheaded at the beginning?
The carriage driver living in Sleepy Hollow. He is portrayed by Tony Maudsley. Is that the guy at the end when Johnny Depp's going to leave and he tells them to wait, and when he steals the carriage, he's off in the corner taking a piss? I wonder if that's who Van Ripper is.
It might be, because that's not the guy from the beginning.
Yeah, I bet that's the guy when Johnny Depp's supposed to be leaving, and then he opens the book and realizes Katrina was trying to protect him.
Okay.
And then he steals the carriage, and that guy's off in the corner taking a wee, and he gets all mad. I don't think
I even realized that that's what was happening.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's trying to pull his pants up when he's running. I'm like, peeing in the corner. Where else are you going to go, I guess? There's no public toilets in Sleepy Hollow. So, yeah, I bet that's who that is.
I guess on the subject of the cast, this has a huge cast. A ton of people that I did not realize were in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew Johnny Depp was in this because, obviously, and Christina Ricci. I did not realize that Miranda Richardson was in this, let alone playing the big bad.
Uh-huh. And then all the guys in their wigs, like each one of them.
Michael Gambon, Richard Griffiths, Ian McDiarmid.
Mm-hmm.
I did not recognize him.
I didn't either.
You sent me the picture, and I was like, I did not even realize that was Emperor Palpatine.
Uh-huh. Well, because he's not talking all cryptic and dark.
Yeah. And then Christopher Walken as the Horseman.
Yep.
I had no idea that he was in this.
Well, and what I like is the Horseman without his head is Ray Park.
Yeah, another Star Wars connection.
Like a Darth Maul out there with all his action.
This came out in the same year, so...
Mm-hmm. It was a big year for Ray Park. Then he went on to be Toad in the X-Men movie.
He did?
Yeah. The first one, he's Toad.
Oh my goodness. I haven't seen that in years.
Yeah,
I
it's all right.
did not make that connection.
Yeah, I just remember being excited because Ray Park was in it, and then I'm like, oh, Toad. All right.
The one with the CGI tongue.
We're not going to go there.
I covered a version of The Wind in the Willows that had Toad as a human, but with a CGI tongue.
Oh, God. No. That's just something you can leave alone. We don't need that.
It was made by the Monty Python's people.
Oh, that makes sense. All right. I don't have any questions then. I gotcha.
That was a weird movie, but it was very entertaining.
I'm sure it was. That's kind of their goal. Weird and entertaining.
It went off the rails at the end, involving
I'm sure it did.
bulldozing the river for a dog food factory, and it ended up getting blown up in the end. I'm like, what is this?
Fuck?
This did not happen in the book at all.
Yeah. You're like, I don't recall this chapter. Is this like afterwards? Is this like a secret, like they tore the pages out at the end or something?
It was a bizarre movie.
But
it was entertaining. So.
That's all that matters.
Oh, and Christopher Lee.
Yep. Yeah, I like how he gets like top billing and he's in the beginning for like 5 minutes. It's worth it though. I mean, Christopher Lee, you could have him.
Yeah.
Even for 5 minutes, you should have him. Mm-hmm. One of the best.
But yeah, Ichabod Crane is a scientist. Well, not a scientist, but he's a detective who does science.
Mm-hmm. Like most of the cop shows now, he's a, he's a detective. Well, because back then they didn't really believe in science or anything. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to be like the outcast too. Just because you find a body in the river doesn't mean they drown.
A lot of the stuff he was doing, though, I was like, is this based on anything, or did they make this up for the movie?
You know, if you look at like medieval forms of science and surgery and all that stuff, I'm sure most of it's made up, but I'm like, I can see a lot of this being like based on very early like artwork and design of things, because things were weird because they were just coming up with stuff. You know, you did a little cocaine and you came up with a weird idea and then you drew it and you did it.
I didn't pay too much attention a few months ago when we watched it. I was only rewatching it to make my notes that at least one instance stood out to me. Because, like, for the most part, all his science stuff is like, this is just Tim Burton wanting to make funny glasses and
right.
weird
It's Tim
gadgets.
Burton being Tim Burton.
Let me look at my notes because I wrote it down. He said something about the part where they're investigating, I think, the first beheading that happens after he arrives in town.
Oh.
He, like, sprinkles some white powder on the ground and says something about the fact that it's smoking indicates a
hard blow to the neck.
Yeah, and I'm like, how?
Yeah. I know, I remember watching that even, like, when I was 16 in the theater going, what the hell? Like, I don't think you can do that, but okay.
Yeah,
a singular thrust to the neck is what he says.
Yeah.
And you're just like, huh?
Like,
okay.
I know this is a fantasy, but, like...
yeah, it'd be different if he would have, like, looked at the skin and, like, how the skin was taut, or if it had been stretched, you know, like, oh, you can tell it was one cut because it's, you know, like, now they can do that by looking at the way bone has been serrated and cut. But back then, they didn't have that, so I suppose you sprinkle a little powder on and... just tells you what you need to know. I don't know. I never understood that part either. I was like, of all the things we're going to do in this movie, this is like the least believable.
That was the one thing that stood out to me. Like, because for the most part, when it's something as a fantasy, I just go with it.
Yeah.
But, like, this is specifically supposed to be scientific, and when he said that, and it registered, because it didn't register the first time I watched it. When it registered, that's what he said. I was like, what?
Yeah. Well, because, like, the rest of the stuff he goes on to do, like, the autopsies and stuff like that, you're like, yeah, you can probably totally, whatever he's doing, you know, when you're cutting it open people and seeing what happened, like, I can believe most of this, but what?
There was other things that didn't technically make sense, like the autopsy when there's, like, a big squirt of blood on his face.
Yeah, especially if they've been dead for a while.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, that's just Tim Burton wanting a big squirt of red blood.
I've got an R-rated movie and I can use as much blood as I want, so I'm gonna.
That was another thing. The blood did not look real to me in this. Like, it looked like Tim Burton blood.
Yeah, I think part of that is just the color palette of the show.
Yes.
Like, everything's so black and white except for blood. And certain hair colors and in certain patterns. So I think that's probably why that it stands out so much, because everything else is so muted. It's pretty thick, though. Like, they went really thick on that syrup when they made that blood.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't water it down very much at all. Either that or all those people have, like, diabetes because their blood is thick. Pretty sure it's diabetic when you have thick blood.
I was not even thinking about it like that.
Like, all these people have some sort of condition. Like, their blood is really syrupy.
Their condition is Burtonitis.
Yeah. They've been Burtonized.
And that reminds me, too, of the flashbacks to his childhood.
Yeah. Those are weird.
I did not realize how... like, watching them the second time, I was like, this is like the live-action Alice in Wonderland from 2010. It reminded me so much of that, especially, like, around the White Queen's Palace. I
think I've watched that once, and I didn't really care for it that much.
A lot of people don't.
Yeah.
Although it has a lot of extreme fans, so...
Yeah, what doesn't?
But I didn't realize how... Like, because obviously that is a Tim Burton movie, and, like, it has Tim Burton touches, but that part of the movie never registered as very Burton-esque to me. But now watching Sleepy Hollow, like, oh yeah, I guess he must have a thing for this palette as well.
Yeah, I guess what I always took from the flashbacks is it was a little bit more grounded with the extremism back then. You know, like, if you weren't very religious, you were a witch. You know, because that's kind of how it was. Like, if you were a woman and you did anything suspicious, we're burning you. Like,
or putting you in an Iron Maiden or whatever that thing is
God,
called.
that part as a kid, I was just like, that's real. Like, they used to do that to people. That's terrifying. It's like, you want, like, you know, as a little kid, you're like, the medieval ages would be fun. And then you learn about medieval torture, and you're like, no, it's okay. No, it's all right.
I was wondering how much of those flashbacks were true and how much were him remembering things in a more horrifying way. Because, like...
For, like, the trauma, PTSD trauma of what he went through.
Yeah, because, like, when that thing opens up and there's like, a wave of blood that comes out.
Well, and as a little kid, you don't remember things. So I'm sure he probably did open it, and his mother probably fell out dead and was probably covered in blood. Because I don't know if they strap you in or if they just, like, push you in and shut the door. You know, like when you put something in the cabinet, you know it's going to fall, so you shut the door real fast. I don't know if they do that when they shove you in. I've never gone into that sort of research.
Me neither.
Surprisingly.
I don't really have plans to either.
No, it sounds like something I would look up, but I haven't. So I'm sure, like, at one point, he probably did see her in there, but he's remembering it more graphic and gory than it was, because he was a little kid who had lost his mom, and he's stuck with his dad, who's a madman. You know, you always exaggerate things when you're a little kid.
Another thing about the flashbacks, and then to present day, the marks on his hands, like, they would not look like that when you have grown up, because they still looked like they were deep. And
I think they kind of come and go. I'm pretty sure.
Oh.
I mean, when they do close-up of his hands, you can see them, but I'm willing to bet, like, if you pause the movie at any other time, you probably wouldn't see them. Yeah, they would have. You'd still have little scars.
Yeah.
But I don't, because unless the things went, like, almost through his hand and he had deep scar tissue, they would have. But it's not this dramatic. We gotta have the drama.
Of course, it's a Burton film.
Yeah, you know, if they're not as noticeable, Katrina can't be like, oh, these marks, what are these? Instead of like, yeah, some marks on your hands there, buddy. Have you had the pox? Like, what's that?
Yeah, it does almost kind of look like a disease.
A little eczema going on here, bro. What's going on?
Yeah.
He's a witch. Burn him.
That town wouldn't have, because they believed in all that stuff.
Right, yeah. Yeah, they're all a little paranoid.
At least I don't think they would have. They did make the one witch live out in the woods, so maybe they would have. I don't know.
Well, I mean, honestly, like, I don't know if they would have gone to get her to burn her, because she was kind of scary. Like, they'd be like, yo, Brother Peter, go in there and get the witch. And he'd be like, no, you go get her. And like, no, we'll just say we killed her. And
she has CGI eyeballs. I'm too scared.
It's like one of the worst parts of the movie. Like, it was so promising. And then you're like, oh, hell, what's this?
When they first went to see her, and I could tell immediately that it was Miranda Richardson. I was like, oh, okay, well, Miranda Richardson's the big bad here. Yeah, and then she did that, and I was like, whoa, maybe she's not. Maybe it wasn't actually Miranda Richardson. I just imagined it. Yeah. No, like, they were twins, I guess.
Yep, no, it is. It's just that 1999 CGI. Like, I guess I didn't even look. I wonder how much of it was, like, they tried to do they would have been so much better with just prosthetics. But, you know, that's when CGI was kind of getting big, you know. It was after Jurassic Park and everybody was trying to play with it. And, because I'm sure if they would have done this before that, it would have been probably mostly prosthetics and stuff like that, which would have aged
it would have looked much better. Yeah.
Much better.
You can always tell, like, the early CGI stuff, because like the early stuff, they melded it so much better because they couldn't rely on it.
Well, and the early stuff, they used it like Jurassic Park did. Like, okay, up close we can do this, but far away we can't do this. So we're going to, like, melt this together. So, like, we can show the T-Rex standing on the car roaring, but once she starts walking, a robot doesn't have legs. Yeah. So we're going to have to do CGI dinosaur in here.
Yeah. But then people became too reliant on it. I'm kind of wondering if the same thing is going to happen with AI. They're going to start being overly reliant on it, and then...
That's scary as hell, man. I can't believe they're doing stuff like that. Taking body scans of people to put them in the background so you don't have to pay extras. Like, this ain't the bridge of the Titanic. You know, all the people were fake because that whole scene was CGI. Yeah. You know, we can just have people. People need jobs. Like, I imagine it will come to that, and eventually they'll hopefully kind of start... Because prosthetics and stuff are starting to come back in. People are realizing your movies age better and look better when you try to make things tangible. You can touch them. It's real.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of, like... Do you know the studio, The Asylum? Mm-mm. They make really terrible, low-budget, cheap horror films.
I was going to say, let me guess. Is it kind of like early Blumhouse or something?
I mean, I've watched a couple for the podcast because they did War of the Worlds, and it was terrible. Like, really stupid. They also have a Sleeping Beauty one that I'm going to try and get my friend to do with me because it looks terrible.
It's not like Pooh, Blood, and Honey, is it?
I don't think it's that bad.
Okay.
But that actually, what's his name? I think it stars somebody from this movie, Casper Van Dien. I actually think he made that movie.
Okay.
And he plays the father of the princess. I don't remember the princess's name in that version. It's not Aurora. It's like Dawn or something.
Oh. Well, we got to skirt around that Disney trademark. Let's see. We can't do Aurora. Dawn. Close enough.
But I watched the beginning. It looks... The acting is terrible.
Well, yeah, probably.
And, like, I'm not very familiar with Casper Van Dien, so I don't know if he has been in anything better or not. He didn't stand out to me in this.
Was he the
Brom?
Brom, okay. I mean, he looks familiar, but he's got just kind of a generic tough guy face. But I don't know if I'd seen him in anything else. I had no idea that was his actual name. But
his role is mostly the same as the book. Down to the fact that he tried to scare him off by pretending to be the Horseman.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because when we first watched this, I didn't know the plot. So when that happened, I was like, so is there a ghost? Are they trying to do this both ways? Which, yeah, they kind of were.
Kind of were. But
then he died.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, because he couldn't be bothered to listen. But like I said, he was just hot-headed. And so.
But that whole scene, I was like, this ghost has given you so many chances to get away. It is not dying. Why are you continuing to try
Right.
this?
Yeah. It's just like he's clear. And like even Johnny Depp, I keep calling him that, Ichabod, even he says he's not after us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you stop. You know, we can get away. He's not trying to kill us. We're not on his agenda until you make him really mad. And now he's just going to get rid of you because you're annoying him.
Yeah. I think weirdly my favorite thing about this movie was the tree.
Yeah, I loved the idea of the tree. I've got a thing for weird trees and that lead to the underworld or whatever, are rooted in magic and sorcery and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always liked the tree.
There was just something about the design that just...
It kind of looked like a screaming phantom or something.
I don't know, just like the gnarled branches, it was so black. Mm-hmm. And even the gross parts of it just kind of added to it.
The blood for sap.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I didn't like all the faces in the tree of the dead heads.
Oh, come on.
I did like the part where the horse crawled out. I kind of wanted to see more of that, but I know they were limited on what they could realistically pull off.
Right. So again, like you do it too many times, you start noticing the wonky CGI. So it's like, we're going to do this once so people are like, ooh.
Yeah.
And then we're going to do it again when they go back to hell. And that's it.
But I just like the idea of the horse crawling out of the ground. I don't know why. I just liked that.
I just like that the horseman and his horse were so close, and he was so nice to his horse. It was the only thing he was nice to in that whole movie was his horse. Kind of makes you like, well, I know he's a bad guy, but at least he's nice to his animal.
It's nice to have one redeeming quality.
Well, everybody should have at least one.
I also liked the scene where he's trying to escape, and then he runs into the two little girls, and the one little girl looks up at him defiantly and snaps the twig.
And you know that was the one who ends up being the stepmother.
Really? I was thinking it was the witch.
No, because she watches him die, and she says, "That's the moment I sold my soul to Satan, and I vowed to bring him back."
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know. I just
because I remember watching it and being like, "You're like 8. This is a bit extreme." But I mean, back then you didn't have you lived into your 30s, so I guess it works. But
so we're like elderly for back then.
We should be dead. We wouldn't have made it. Though I guess the men in the movie are older, but it's kind of hard to tell with the wigs and like the makeup and the color tone and stuff. So
for some reason it didn't even occur to me that they were wearing wigs. Like obviously they're wearing wigs, but then the one guy like falls over or dies or something and the wig falls off, and I was like, oh, he actually has hair under that.
Well, and I think that's kind of the point too. Like you don't really think twice about it and the one guy takes his off to scratch his head, and you're like, oh, Well, yeah, obviously. Because that's what you did back then, but...
But did they always wear the
No,
wigs?
I think it was a bit maybe over dramatized, maybe. I don't know, because I think they're all supposed to be in positions of power, and you'd have
they
to,
are,
like...
but I always just thought that the wigs were, like, ceremonial, like you wear them in the courtroom.
Yeah, I was going to say, I always kind of thought they were more, like, for court and stuff, but... This is their own little town. They don't answer nobody. They can do whatever they want.
This is Tim Burton's fantasy
world.
world.
This is Tim Burton's fantasy world. We can do whatever we want. It looks good, so.
Yeah, I mean, it added to their characters.
Yes.
It told you a lot about them, so.
Mm-hmm. And it stands out, again, with the black and white color palette.
Yeah.
You know, it gives it a little bit more pop with all the white hairs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, one thing I thought was funny, because I looked this up. It's one of the few things I looked up before you got it here. So remember when the movie starts, it says Francis Ford Coppola, and we were like, oh, he is involved in this? I can't find exactly what he did, because it says that what I read, I think it may have been on Wiki or one of these things, or no, it was a trivia page, because I looked it up. They said that Tim Burton didn't even know Francis Ford Coppola was involved until he got, like, the cut of the movie and his name popped up. So I don't know exactly what he may have, maybe his name's just on it, maybe he was signed on as a producer or something.
That makes me question something else, because I just recorded an episode on the Disneyland attraction Captain EO, which was directed by Francis Ford Coppola. That's the Michael Jackson science fiction thing.
Oh, okay.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, okay. I've never...
I was like, Francis Ford Coppola? Like,
Yeah.
it makes more sense for him to do something like Sleepy Hollow than it did Captain EO.
Well, and, like, when I saw his name, I was like, oh, it totally makes sense that... Because a lot of times when I watch it, you know, I'm doing other stuff, so I don't pay attention to the opening credits and the names until we watched it. And I was like, oh, yeah. Because, like, looking at, like, Bram Stoker's Dracula, like I said, the soundtrack's very similar. And I'm like, oh, I can see a little bit of, like, maybe little similarities. But now knowing he didn't really do anything with the movie, I'm like, okay, maybe his name's just there because it's a good way to get people to come see the movie because his name's attached to it. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of weird.
But then again, that makes me question how much he actually had to do with Captain EO.
Yeah, and maybe
that is even weirder than this.
Yeah, maybe it was a case where they just needed a famous name or something attached to it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
The whole ending scene with the windmill. Does Tim Burton use windmills in a lot of his movies? Because I haven't seen it in a while, but I'm like 85% certain that the whole last part of Frankenweenie took place on a windmill.
Well, that's because it's an homage to Frankenstein. Frankenstein, the climax of the movies has to do with the windmill. Plus, back then, those things were everywhere.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just like a kind of like a thing for Frankenstein because a lot of Frankenstein's has to do with a windmill.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty sure like the lab was... It's been a while and there's a lot of Frankensteins, but I know the windmill is a prominent fixture in the Frankenstein. So I'm pretty sure it just kind of was something to do with that, which would also be why Frankenweenie would have something to do with the windmill because it's
that makes
Frankenstein.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
It just struck me watching this. I was like, I feel like I watched this happen in Frankenweenie.
Yeah,
like obviously not this, but
yeah, I think it's just an homage to those. Yeah, those old movies. And I read Frankenstein. It probably was in there, but I read that book a while ago and I don't remember. It's a weird book. It's a good book, but it's weird.
I think the biggest thing, obviously most of this is not from the book, but the thing that stuck out to me as a huge departure, at least character-wise, was that they added the kid, Mazbeth.
Oh, little Mazbeth.
As like a sidekick, which there was no child sidekick in the book.
Probably not, no. I kind of wonder if that was just to add some more characters to it and to give them a little bit more freedom with somebody that didn't have any ties to the original story.
It could be.
And, a lot of movies, for some reason, they always think you need another little sidekick character in there, but he worked out. I liked him. He wasn't annoying or anything.
It's not the same, but it almost reminded me of the fact that they always have kids in Jurassic Park films.
Yeah, that could probably be a little bit of it, too. Like, a lot of movies they throw a little... Even though this is an R-rated, but like I said, it's a soft R, so take your kids to it, but that could be part of it too. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe they just wanted someone else for Johnny Depp to play off of too instead of Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
You know, somebody to him to talk about his theories and stuff like that instead of him talking to himself the whole time. That would probably be mostly why, just so he could have some help and somebody else for him to talk with. That'd be my guess.
For a brief moment, I thought they were going to be bringing in another kid, but then I think they killed the small child.
Yeah, they killed the little redhead.
Thankfully not on screen, but like...
No, they get close, though. You see him putting the head in the bag. You're like, oh, dear.
I was kind of surprised that they took it that far.
When I remember watching it, I was kind of like, all right, so are we going to go there? Child murder, which I think is kind of like the nail in the coffin for the villain. Like, yeah, she's bad and she's trying to avenge what happened to her. Then you kill the kid who couldn't possibly ruin your plans because the kid can't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like, okay, now you're bad. You killed a little kid.
She was sending a murderous ghost after everyone in town, so...
Well, everybody who could, like...
She just crossed a final line of
Yeah,
people.
it was like, it's one thing if you're going after a list of people who could threaten your inheritance and all the stuff you want to get, but now you're killing a little kid who can't possibly threaten anything.
And a very cute little kid.
Yeah, he's a cute little thing. He's kind of weird. Kind of, his one line, you're just like, oh, I can't tell if he's a weird little kid or if it's just a child actor thing, but okay.
What was his line? I don't remember.
He just says yes, and he doesn't blink, and I'm like, oh, all right, kid. But, yeah, I think that's why they threw that in there, because it's kind of like, most people can, all right, we can go past a lot of things, but the second you're killing little kids, you're like, oh. Well, and she also, I guess, has the horseman stab the widow's stomach to make sure the baby's dead. But I'm like, well, you chopped her.
Oh, that's right. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, because I'm like, well, you chopped her head off. Obviously, baby's not going to make it. But it's just another kind of little extra, her being a bit extra with her murders when. Because if she wouldn't have done that, they would have, well, I guess the one guy knew she was pregnant, so. But I think if they wouldn't have done that, it wouldn't have roused as much suspicion when Ichabod is looking into it.
Yeah.
He may have just thought, oh, they killed her for something else, but then when he's like, oh, she's pregnant, so why would we also kill the baby? Just little things to try to make her point out that, no, she is bad. She's conniving and evil, and this is why.
I do like her as an evil person, though. Like, she's one of my favorite Queen of Hearts in all the versions of Alice that I've seen.
I wondered when you were like, hey, she's in this. I was like, I don't know her from anything else, but okay.
I feel like I've seen her in other things, but, like, the main thing I know her from is the 1999 Alice in Wonderland.
Well, and she does a very good job of playing, just like a mild, quiet wife. And then she kind of flips that switch to being...
Yeah.
A little over the top, but I mean it's a horror movie, so most villains are over the top once they've been found out.
Yeah.
But throughout the movie though, like when you watch it once and you realize it's her and then you watch it again, the way she looks at people and stuff, you're like, "Oh, yeah. I see it now that I'm looking for it."
Yeah.
Before you're just a little odd like everybody else, but now we're like, "Oh, you're giving him the side eye." So you know what he's thinking. I thought it was interesting that they said that Johnny Depp did all his own stunts, including when he gets dragged by the horse. They said he wore a bulletproof vest so he could do that. And then I liked that after they got done filming this movie, he bought the horse that played Gunpowder. And his real name was Goldeneye, even though he only had one.
His one remaining eye was golden.
And they said, I can't remember if they said he was blind in one eye or only had one eye, because now I'm trying to remember if I remember the horse missing an eye or if they just shot him on the side that he had an eye, because I'm like, I've watched this movie a lot. I don't remember him missing an eye.
I didn't notice, but now that you say that, I feel like if Tim Burton had known that, they should have given him an eye patch. That would have been so Tim Burton.
Yeah, or put a little rock in there or something like that.
Like a fanciful eye patch.
Yeah. But yeah, so he bought the horse after the movie was done, so I thought that was sweet.
Yeah, yeah.
And the movie did pretty good. I think their budget was like between 70 and 100 million, and it brought in 200 million. I mean, you got to remember too, this is 1999, so.
And an R-rated movie.
Yeah.
Which typically doesn't do as well as other ratings.
Yep, so I'd say they doubled their budget, so Can't really argue with that.
Yeah.
I'm just glad they didn't go on to make, like, a whole bunch of sequels or something. Like, oh, the Horseman's back again.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how you could do a sequel to this, but, like, if somebody wanted to do a sequel, they would find a way.
They'd figure it out. Yeah. Somebody else would just dig up the skull and be like, hey. So in the original book, so he goes missing, right? They don't really have a conclusion of...
At the end of the book, he goes missing, and, like, years later, someone comes to town and tells them that they know of an Ichabod Crane working somewhere, but nobody in town believes that it's actually him. They think he was taken by the Horseman.
Yeah, because I knew that the ending was kind of like that it's a mystery of what happens to him at the end. It's not a final answer like this one where they defeat the Horseman and him and Katrina and the Masbeth go to New York and she wears her very obviously Beetlejuice-inspired dress and they go back to New York.
Yeah. No.
With her money.
Oh, yes, of course.
Because she's the living one now, so I guess he did get the money in the end.
Yeah. They just didn't make it very obvious that he was lusting after the money.
No, because he didn't need it because he was a detective and he had an apartment, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it kind of plays into the book a little bit there that in the end he got the money and the girl and...
It went more in his favor.
Yeah, it went in his favor.
It actually worked out for him.
Yeah. Well, and he wasn't... he was kind. Like you said, the original book said he was kind. And this one is.
Yeah.
He is very kind. He's odd.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really know how to talk to people, but he's never outlandishly rude to anybody. When him and Katrina, meet...
Well, the one part that was like, really, was when he had Masbeth in front of him like a human shield.
Yeah, he's still a little cowardly.
Yeah, like jumping and screaming away from a spider or whatever.
I would too. That's a big spider. I'm sorry, I'm getting on the bed too. You're gonna kill that. No way. It's a big spider. No. But he does try to protect him at the end, though. He kind of mans up a little bit.
Yeah.
He won't let him go. He tries to save them and get them. He kind of grows up. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I do like, though, is his romance with Katrina. She's betrothed, and he knows that. And so they don't really do a lot of flirting or anything. Like, there's no outright... they make eyes and stuff like that, but he knows she's betrothed, and he doesn't directly ever go after her. It's more like she goes after him. But they don't push it. They don't, she doesn't cheat. They don't push any boundaries, and I always enjoyed that. Their romance is very subtle. And then even once Brahm is killed, he still doesn't outright pursue her. Like I said, she kind of goes for him. Yeah. Probably because Brahm was probably her only option in town, and she's like, oh, this is the best I got, so... But now that he's gone, or dead, she can do whatever she wants. But they don't ever push that boundary. I feel like a lot of movies would have had them, like, sleeping together immediately. But they don't, And they do share a kiss or two, but...
Well, the kiss happened when she was blindfolded. Like, she was... Yeah, it was a party game or something.
Yeah, it was a game. And then they kiss, I think, outside of her old home. When they're, like, out in the woods together, I think she kisses him. Yeah, she kisses him in the western woods to, like, give him good luck or something. But it's just, like I said, it's all very soft and subtle and sweet. Nothing's very over the top or anything like that. And I always enjoyed that about that. Because I hate it when movies put in a little too much. When you're like, people wouldn't actually act like that. Yeah. And back in this day, when you weren't supposed to, flirt or touch or anything before marriage... Or you're like an outcast, like some of the girls in the show, like I think like the serving girl who's like, having an affair with the doctor. They kind of hide that because
I did, the first time I watched it, I did not even realize that was the same person. It was only on rewatching it for this now. I was like, oh wait, that was the servant.
Girl, you're really cute. You can go after somebody other than that nasty doctor. I know he's a doctor, but come on, you can find some nice little...
He's an emperor.
Yeah, that's true. Emperor Palpatine. Oh, is that how it happened? Is that how we got Rise of Skywalker? Oh, no, we're not going there. Anyway. Back to your notes. Before we go off on another tangent that will never, ever end.
Oh, the score.
Oh, yeah. Danny Elfman's score.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. Danny Elfman is one of my favorite film composers. He works a lot with Tim Burton, so.
Yeah, they're kind of two peas in a pod.
He just has a sound that I really like.
Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of his stuff, it's got the similarities. Like, you watch stuff and you know it's Tim Burton.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's like when I went and saw Multiverse of Madness, I'm pretty sure he did the musical score for that, too. But yeah, like, you know, Edward Scissorhands, Batman Returns, Nightmare Before Christmas, obviously. Like, his filmography for movies is insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great score. It fits the movie perfectly. It's just the right amount of, like, haunted tension and...
Mm-hmm. Oh, good grief. At the bottom of the Wikipedia page, it says that on June 10th, 2022, Paramount announced plans for a reboot of Sleepy Hollow with Lindsay Beer in talks to write and direct it.
You don't need to reboot. If you want to tell another Sleepy Hollow story, just tell another story and follow the book closer.
Yeah, that always annoys me because, like, it's always weird to me that they have to, like, frame things as a reboot. Because, like, if this is another adaptation of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, fine.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
but,
just
like,
do another one.
Why remake this specific one?
I think every time they want to do a reboot, they should just re-release the original in theaters and see how it does.
Yeah, I mean, they'd make money.
Yeah, I'd go see it again. Like, it's gonna make money. Like, stop. Well, that was, what, a couple years ago?
Yeah.
Maybe it won't happen.
Yeah, you never
Maybe
know.
they'll look what happened to The Crow and be like, never mind.
Sometimes you never know. They announce things and then they never happen.
And I'm not saying that all reboots and remakes are failures, because there are some that are spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
But most of those are like remakes of movies from the 40s.
I always say that if you're going to remake or reboot something, do something that had potential, but the original just didn't quite get there.
Yes. Like, you watched it and you're like, wow, this could have been so much better.
Mm-hmm.
But you watch this, you're not going to make it any better.
Or if you take a movie that, like, they always want to do, like, live-action remakes.
Mm.
I would like them to do it the opposite. Like, take a live-action movie, but do an animated.
Right.
Because they could do something really cool looking with animation.
Well, and I've been saying with all these stupid Disney live-action versions, air quotes, live-action versions.
Yeah.
Because I haven't liked a single one of them, other than Aladdin. I had a good time with that. Do ones that would make sense, like Treasure Planet.
Yeah.
Or the Atlantis one.
Yeah.
Those would make complete sense to be live action.
They would also make a lot of money, I think, because there's people online always talking about them every time somebody brings up
The Road to El
remakes.
Dorado.
Well, that's not Disney,
I know,
but I
but
could see that
still.
one.
It's like you got movies like that would make complete sense to make live action.
Yeah.
We don't need these other ones.
And if it's a story like Legend of Sleepy Hollow, just make your own version.
Right.
I'm always, like, mildly annoyed when they want to remake a very specific version of something.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said,
or like with Disney, frame it as if they are doing that and then not do that. Like, I know Cinderella is billed as, like, a remake of the Disney Cinderella. If you watch it, it's really just an adaptation of the fairy tale. They maybe have a couple allusions.
Are you talking about the version with Robb Stark as the prince from Game of Thrones?
I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't seen Game of Thrones, so.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I will say, the one Cinderella movie with Cate Blanchett,
Yes.
I do
the
like
Disney one.
that one.
Yeah,
but I don't look at it as a cartoon remake either.
No, they lump it in with those, but really
It's not.
it's just another Cinderella adaptation.
Yeah, it's like you can just, like with The Little Mermaid, they could have just done the book. It's like every one of those stories, like you can readapt them, not readapt, but you can make that movie. You can just make it on your own separate from the original story.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, hopefully they don't. Like I said, if they want to make another Sleepy Hollow, I'm all for it. Just don't say it's a reboot.
Yeah.
Just say we made a Sleepy Hollow movie.
Yeah.
Just call it The Adventures of Ichabod. Or The Headless Horseman. You can call it hell, call it Sleepy Hollow again. That's in right now. How many Halloween movies are called Halloween? 3? They called Scream 5 Scream. But
I
it's
saw
Scream
that. I was
5.
like, how are they going to figure out which is which?
Because then after that came out Scream 6. So you're like, okay, go back and add a 5 to that title. It's like you can do another one if you want to follow the adaptation. Or I'm sure there's tons of graphic novels that are based on the Sleepy Hollow book.
Mm-hmm.
Find one of them. You could do a really good gory slasher with the story of Sleepy Hollow. Like I said, they originally thought about doing with this one. And you can make slashers really cheap. And it would probably make a lot of money. And as long as it's fun, go for it. But you don't have to remake it. You don't have to try to capture the same charm of having him be a detective and coming up to solve the murders. You can have him be a cowardly school teacher.
Yeah.
You could make Ichabod the villain, actually. That would be fun.
He would easily translate to a villain.
Yeah.
All you have to do is play up the fact that he's a gold digger.
Yes. That's what I would do. You could easily have him move there to, teach school. Be a teacher. Though I guess he only had one classroom, so I guess he is teaching the whole school.
Yeah.
You could have him move there as a teacher and worm his way in amongst people. Mm-hmm. And you could have the whole Headless Horseman thing kind of be in the background.
I almost feel like that's how the Disney one plays out. Like, the Disney one plays out more like a comedy because it's Disney, and it is sort of horror-esque, especially towards the end. But, watching that now as an adult, I remember watching it as a kid. I didn't really think much of it. But watching it as an adult, I was like, Ichabod is icky.
Yeah, that's why he's ick. He's Ichabod.
So he really could be changed to a villain quite easily.
Like I said, make him, like you said, make him the gold digger. Mm-hmm. Have the movie focus on Katrina. Make her the hero. Trying to, fend off Ichabod, who's after her money. And, maybe you could have Brom even just have him be the horseman. How do we get him out of town? How do we get rid of him? He thinks he's made it so that we're the paranoid ones and everybody else likes him because he's such a good liar and worming his way in. Kind of like a single white female kind of thing. Mm-hmm. He's worming his way into people's hearts, but he's the villain.
Yeah.
So maybe they come up with the horseman thing to be like, oh, he cursed this town or he brought this curse upon us. Or just get on that horse and get that pumpkin and run him out of town, make him look crazy. Because if you go after him when nobody else is around and he starts getting paranoid and crazy and start acting crazy around people and breaking that facade, there we go. That would be great. It'd be an interesting movie. It'd be different. It'd be fun.
Yeah. Now I kind of want this.
Yeah. And at the end, you can either have him, I think the best way to do it would be have him accidentally die. Don't have the horseman or Brom, whoever, kill him, or put Katrina on the horse. She's small.
That would actually be really interesting.
That would actually work better if she's shorter because it won't be so obvious that they're covering her head up.
Put the big shoulder pads on
Yeah,
her.
because when you got a 6'4" man, you're like, okay, his head's gone. How big's this guy? But if you get a shorter person, it'll look a little less the anatomy. But, the end, have him fall, knock his head, die. Have him fall off a cliff. You don't have to actually have a big fight at the end, but you could have him snap and maybe he kills some folk. Maybe the town riots against him with their pitchforks and chases him to the windmill if you want to throw a Frankenstein homage in there. There's so many things you can do without rebooting a story that's already, like I said, it didn't bomb at the box office. It did good money.
Yeah.
People liked it. People watch it all the time. I watch it every year at Halloween.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's a soft R. Anybody could watch it. This one, you could make it a hard R. You could make it like The Witch and really push the Puritan religious aspects to it. Whatever. There's just so many things you could do that you don't need to do a remake.
Yeah.
You just need to sit down and do some thinking.
Do something original. Be creative.
Yeah. It's not that hard. I just came up with an idea. But it make money? Yeah. Who knows? But it's different.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of having Ichabod be the villain.
Hey, I'll write that. I'll get right on it. Like my zombies versus birds thing that I haven't written in 15 years. I'll get right on it. I'll write that screenplay.
I think I forgot about that. You told me about that, but that actually
you reminded me of it. Popped
too.
Up on Facebook a few times as a memory, and you were like, "Hey, did you write this yet?" And I'm like, "No." Sorry, I procrastinate. If there's no deadline, it won't get done.
Deadlines sadly do help.
Well, not so much for me today because my notes are very scarce, but I don't really. No. I was busy with other stuff, so. But anything else to talk about with this one?
Oh, I think that's Probably as good a place as any to...
Yeah, I mean, we already rebooted it ourselves, so.
I think that will be all for this episode. We will probably be back in the future for something else. So until next time.
See you later.
Thanks for listening to Every Version Ever. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow my co-hosts as well. My link tree and all of our links will be in the description below. If you want more of my content, all my podcasts are available on YouTube as well as most podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this show, check out one of the other podcasts or check out my Patreon for bonus and extended episodes you won't find anywhere else. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening and we'll see you next time.